Let's do it. I'm pumped.
All right. Hello and welcome to the most exciting podcast in the history of the Tribal Training Podcast. No doubt. We got Goldstein here with me, and this is the Zion race recap. We think that this might be a single podcast, but who knows? We might be chatting for 2 hours and say, we need to pause here and do another 2 hours another time. So this is going to be an adventure, just like the race was. And we'll see where this ends up. We'll see what lessons emerge. Goldstein, thank you for being here. Say what's up.
What's going on, team? What's going on, tribe? What's going on, everybody listening? People who saw what went down, maybe on social media or are connected with us, our family, our friends. We are just super excited to share an amazing story, a story for the ages, and to break it down and bring everybody as inside our experience as we can, but also for us to, in real time, talk about the struggles, the lessons, the unlocks, the breakthroughs, the breakdowns, the breaking points, and everything that made this weekend and week really incredible, and an experience that, I mean, surely we're never going to forget. But for me, like, we're talking like a top four, top two life experience. It's like marrying my wife, watching my children be born, and then it's kind of like Zion is, just right underneath that threshold. And I think I think a lot of the people who were there have a similar feeling. So we're just super excited to share this with everybody.
No doubt, dude. No doubt. Before we get into it, I need to announce we are running back this exact same team protocol. We have already decided on a race that is in March of 2025. We are going to be running back basically the same setup for this race, but improving on it in the ways that we understood it could be enhanced. And if you are wanting to get in on that, we have already opened it up to the Zion group, and we already have 6 guys who are down to run it back. And we're going to have limited spots for this. I will mention that if you've listened to the past podcasts, the idea of multiple race distances is what we're going to roll with. So there will be distances anywhere from 100 miler to a 50K, and we are going to have smaller groups built within that. And if you want to be a part of this mission, we are opening up a wait list. And I will drop a link into the Spotify description here for you to fill out a form to get on that wait list. This is going to be a limited spot experience, but we want it available to people who want to commit. And a year out, essentially, 11 months out, this is the time to commit to this process. And this is the time to immerse yourself into the team and set yourself up for success to have what is going to be another life-changing experience. So, with that being said, let's get right into it, Goldstein.
No
I
time like
want
the
to
present.
uh I want to start actually. So we're going to basically just break the race down here, but I really got to start with pre-race and race eve. So we head into Zion and we've got 10 athletes who are set to run 100 miles. And the goal is very clear. 10 athletes starting together, finishing together, 10 finish lines. And at 5:38 p.m. on Friday before the race, like this is around when people are starting to eat, getting prepped up to go to bed, I get a text from Cam. And Cam says, dude, can your sister give me an IV? I'm not feeling so good. And instantly I'm like, okay, that's not great. But my mind instantly goes to this place where I'm like, all right, well, he'll get an IV. He'll be fine. He'll do the race. I'm not going to mention it to anybody. I'm just going to keep this on the down low. And then it'll be kind of a funny thing to be able to share back with the team afterwards. And so I let Madison, know, can you go do this for Cam? And I didn't tell her to keep it quiet. And she didn't like outwardly say anything, but just in like the dialogue, very quickly, people caught on that something was up. And really quickly, people started to piece together that Cam had been looking like he was kind of run down the previous 2 days. Like he'd been laying down a lot. And we didn't know if he was just resting. No one really thought too much of it. But once we heard that he was feeling like he might have the flu and needed an IV, it was like, oh shit, he's really not been feeling great. And um, Madison gave him the IV, and he ended up heading to the ER, and he wanted to get tests done. He was basically like, dude, I know my body. And he had actually been in the hospital with his dad. His dad was in the hospital for, I think, 4 days, um, either a week or 2 weeks before the race. And Cam was with him and thought he had picked something up. And he had actually mentioned to me about a week before that he thought he had the flu, but thought he was over it. And I was like, that's not great to hear, but sounds like you're over it. So hopefully we're good. But clearly it was some kind of just lingering thing. And Cam messages me from the ER, and he's basically like, dude, I can't be a liability to the team. It's not the right thing for me to race tomorrow. And so I stepped aside and gave him a call, and he had chatted with his mom, chatted with his brother, and I could feel like the tension in his decision, right? I could feel that he didn't want to let the team down. I could feel that he knew it wasn't right for him, but he's also a competitor. And he freaking showed up to Zion and he trained for this thing. And he was the first person in town. And he's the one that did the grocery haul. And he's been there setting things up. And he was helping man the grill. And he's been a part of this experience. And he was doing the podcast, right? And so I'm like hearing this and I'm like, dude, I 1,000% support you. However you want to think about this, I want you to just make a firm decision for yourself. Maybe not on this phone call, but like make some kind of decision and let's work to being at peace with that rather than that lingering up until like maybe tomorrow morning. And so shortly after that, he texted me and decided that he wasn't going to race. And to me, that was the first in what eventually became just a long string of selfless events and selfless decisions that took place amongst the team. Um, I thought it took a lot of courage for Cam to make that choice. I think he knew it was the right choice for him. I think we saw some things. Maybe we'll laugh later in the pod on him running and needing to fall to his knees or something like that. You were saying. So clearly physically ill with something. Um, but just very, very selfless for Cam to make that decision. Took a lot of courage. And the other thing that it made me reflect on and that I echoed out to the team is, man, what greater example do we need of being grateful to make it to this starting line? Like just to make it to the starting line, yeah, you got to do the training and you got to put in the work, right? But you also need a lot of things to go right. And all of us were in the same house, right? So I'm sure everybody had some initial thought of, oh shit, have I caught something that Cam might have? Right? That went into my head. I was like, shit, I better be good. I better be healthy. And I don't want like that kind of headspace to be occupying my thoughts ahead of this race. And so, um, selfless of Cam, took a lot of freaking courage, not an easy decision, and presented just the idea of just gratitude to the team on making it to the starting line. And then also just like, we got 15 people traveling in from across the country. We're staying in under one house. We're sharing meals. We're using the same bathrooms. And to me, it seemed like honestly a bit of a miracle that he was the only one that was limited with illness. What do you think on all that?
I said it in the morning because I was, I think, one of the people who knew that Cam was out at night. Not everybody on the team knew that, and so people found out in the morning, right? That Cam wasn't going to be racing, and this is like 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock when everybody's getting up and we're getting ready to prep, and all of a sudden, people on the team are hearing one of us is already down. Um, so spinning that into a positive was crucial, not just for Cam, but I think for everybody. And the way I described it was power move. Cam made the power move. Like it's we're all competitors. Like there's the time, there's the money, there are the resources. We pour everything into trying to get to this start line. And we are the people who will fight through pain, right? We will fight through pain in order to get what's ours. That's kind of like what binds us all to the team. So for him to have the courage and the foresight and the wisdom to understand that he's not able to do it, and any time he's out there with us, he's dragging everybody back. I can't imagine the hurt in his heart that he had to go through in order to make that decision. And it really did give us a perspective, right? It's like Cam's not here. We got to go do this for him. We got to show up for him. We got to make sure that his sacrifice, right, taking himself out in order to allow us to go further, that had to be the energy that we took with us on the entire race. We needed his spirit, we needed his power, we needed his humility, his grace, and his courage. And I love how you kind of foreshadow the rest of the story that his act of selflessness set the table for every other person to make a selfless move in order to get the lessons, the experiences, and the breakthroughs that each of us as individuals needed. And for Cam, just the giving away that starting line was likely a gigantic breakthrough of his on his own journey, right? And that's the cool thing about a gigantic team race like this is we all had an idea of what the breakthrough was that we wanted to achieve, but none of us was ready for the actual event to occur and for the true breakthroughs to happen, right? It's like we had a gut feeling that something big was out there for all of us. We may have had a low resolution or like a shadowy image of what that might have been, but it took the pressure and it took actually getting there and having to do the event to force us into these breakthroughs that we didn't really know were coming, likely didn't expect. And in the moment that we felt them, I don't want to be feeling this. This isn't what I signed up for. Why is this happening to me right now? This isn't how I drew it up. And in those moments, if you're by yourself, this is where depression, this is where like this is stupid. Why did I even bother? Like I'm giving this garbage up for good. If you're by yourself, these are the gigantic obstacles that just crush your spirit and your soul. But as a team, what was so beautiful is together we actually were able to realize that these were gigantic victories and we all felt at peace and happy, even though from the outside looking in, it's like you didn't even get to race Cam. And then to foreshadow the story, you guys didn't get the 100. Like, why are you happy about that? Well, let's tell you why we're happy. It has something to do with Cam's power move at the beginning. Hero Cam, absolute hero.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting for me too because I had some people on the team, but also just like friends who were knowing that I was doing this. They were often asking like, "What's the plan B?" Like, you're having 10 athletes and you're saying you guys are all going to finish. Like, what's the plan B? I'm like, there is no plan B. The plan
No
B
plan
is that
B.
we'll adapt and overcome in real time with whatever comes up. And it was like literally I come down to the kitchen. We'll get into race morning here. Woke up at like 2:45, come down to the kitchen. There were probably already 5 or 6 guys in the kitchen, eating, having eggs, coffee was brewing. And that was when I shared with the team. I really asked, I was like, have you guys heard that Cam's not racing yet? And Jamie's like, I did just now. And I'm like, okay. So I was basically like, listen, this is what's going on. He's not racing for this reason, and this is how we're moving forward as a team. And we're making a slight adjustment, right? I had the team broken down into pairs. Louis was paired with Cam, so I'm like, Louis, you're being absorbed into Brandon and I's group, and we're gonna get this thing done moving forward from here.
Sorry, my internet was a bit laggy, so I missed what you just said. I apologize.
No, all good. Basically, just sharing that that was our first chance to adapt and overcome. That was our first chance to move off of our overall plan, right? Our plan was to get 10 athletes across the finish line, and we didn't have 10 athletes at the starting line. So, immediate adjustment. I loved the vibes when I came downstairs to the kitchen on race morning. We were all planning to get up at around 3. I ended up getting a little bit earlier, and a bunch of people were already up. But to me, like there was just like a calm and powerful energy in the house. Like there weren't that many lights on in the kitchen, just a couple of lights on, people eating, getting fuel in, and it was just like we're ready to go do this thing. It was much different to me than like an individual Iron Man energy in the morning, where there's like, I don't know, maybe a lot more anxiety I would usually feel. I actually remember in Ironman Florida 2022, I woke up and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like that was the thought in my head. And I was like, I don't like having to grapple with this at 3 in the morning before I'm about to go do an Ironman. And I think it was just having the team together. The race morning vibes in the house were calm and powerful, and had me excited to go out there.
Yeah, yeah. It also I think was the result of the buildup, right? We had 2 days together, all in the house, prepping all of our things like you detailed in those earlier pods. And I think that gave everyone like a real peace of mind, knowing like that whatever was going to happen out there, we were in it together, right? And that camaraderie gave us confidence and it gave us stability, and it just the one thing that was so true about that house for the entire time was that was a place of peace. Like
Mm,
you can't imagine 15 people, many of whom meeting for the very first time in person, living under the same roof for 6 days with an incredible amount of stress in terms of preparation, in terms of what we were attempting to do, and even on the come down. And when I say there wasn't any bit of negative energy in that house, like that's the truth. Like
yeah.
there was never an interpersonal conflict. There was never anybody like making it difficult for any other individual, right? Everyone was kind of like there picking each other up. And if there was anything, people kept it to themselves. They didn't poison the well.
Yep.
And I just think that was so beautiful in allowing us to really just focus in on the race and be excited and present. And something we talk a lot about in the tribe is like the race is the celebration, right? And it really felt like that morning it was the celebration. It was the culmination of the work. And it's like we're very lucky and privileged. And now we know Cam is not able to go out with us. So I think it gave everybody a little more reverence
Yep.
and a little bit more um all right, like we really need to dial in here, um and try and get the job done. Like for me personally, I can't speak to anybody else, but for me personally, I just get so energized knowing that it's a trail run in the morning. It doesn't matter if it's a giant race. It doesn't matter if it's just me going out by myself. So for me, it's a lot of I'm just doing the same things I'm personally normally doing. As such, everybody saw me with my headphones, and not to be like the antisocial person, but like I went out onto the street. I had my tunes. I was doing my warm ups, which is effectively like a kind of dance, just jumping around on the top of my feet just so I could get like a little bit of that a good, comfortable. This isn't so different than what we're normally trying to do. Like not trying to make too big of a deal of the whole thing, but just trying to like ease into the moment. And it
Hmm.
seemed like that's what everyone was doing. They were trying to ease into the moment. There was no we're doing this, and it was really just a continuation of the tone that we had set in the house, where no one is forcing anything, nobody is pressuring anything, but things are sort of organically happening and emerging as they should. So that was just, I think, the byproduct of the environment that you know you had so expertly curated throughout the previous 2 days.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. Good vibes in the house. We ended up leaving at about 4, to get over to the race start for about 4:30. Race start was at 5 with a rolling start until 5:30. So you could really start at any point. Between then, we got over there. We did a team huddle in the parking lot, which was rad. We haven't been able to do that before. Usually, before an Ironman, people are just panicking around. They're racing around from transition. We have done a slight little huddle, but there's just so much going on. The music is blasting that it's a little bit fragmented. So it was important for me. I knew we were all driving over in a caravan together. So I said, hey, let's all huddle up. And I got to share some words with the team and just give a bit of a pre-race speech, which was a great opportunity for me. I thanked everybody for being there and said that I was proud of them for being there and that they were all going to be called on at some point in the day to deploy a skill that was unique to them to support the team. And the energy was alive, man. We did a tribe on three. That was powerful. I haven't seen that video from Charlie yet, but I'm sure that that'll be a good one. We all probably hit the bathroom and make our way over to the race start. We're walking over there like a little bit as they're playing the national anthem. A couple hundred people, it seemed, were lined up. Maybe not that many. I think there were about 160 total that did the 100. I almost forgot my poles. They were in the car. I had Madison, my sister, run back and grab them. This is why you need a team. Louis ended up forgetting his freaking running shoes for one of the drop bags. So listen, even the most experienced guys, listen, there's a lot going on.
Forgot
um,
my hat. I forgot my hat in the car.
you
My
forgot
my
your hat in the
brim
car,
my
so it's like,
my
listen.
my brimmed hat.
Kind of funny to laugh at that kind of stuff. We saw this Simon guy that a lot of folks had watched his YouTube videos on the race. Josh Payne was saying what's up to him, thanked him for his videos. That was cool. I think I saw Jamie slam an extra cup of coffee. They had some coffee set out before the start, and the official start was at 5. That was where a large wave went out. I looked on my watch. We started at 5:04. And it was cool. I was kind of thinking that if it's a wave start, I'm just thinking about an Ironman wave where it's like a structured line. I mean, I knew there wasn't going to be that many people, but basically after that initial group went, it was just like an open start line that you could just walk up and go through. So that was what we got to do as a team. Really exciting just to freaking get the thing started, man. Really, really exciting to be like, damn, we're inside of 100-mile ultra right now. In the first couple of steps, we started essentially just in a pairing line. We didn't even structure it, but that sort of seemed to be how we rolled out. And we went up whatever it was, 100, 200 yards out of the parking area, and then headed out on this rolling dirt road, which ended up being the first 6-mile stretch of the course. From my perspective, that was a great opportunity for us to just ease into the effort. There wasn't really much elevation change. I think maybe 500 feet over 6 miles, but it was really easy running. Gave us a chance to hit the bathroom a couple of times, get our fueling going. In that stretch, we also built our sound off system. So I realized that it would be very valuable as we're starting to, people are going to the bathroom. It's like, all right, well, where's that person? Where's that person? Where's that person? It's like, all right, let's all get numbers here, 1 to 9. So we built off a 1 to 9 sound off system and got some reps letting that rip. And that was also we're running in the pure dark. So just like easy, relaxed kind of an effort, very still is how I would describe the scene. Um, Anything else that you've got from that first 6-mile stretch?
Um, just like easing into the moment. I just want to draw back a little bit to your distinction between the ultra and the Ironman, right? Like these are both endurance events, but the energy, I mean, I haven't been to an Ironman, but I've observed and certainly talked to so many people within the tribe to know that the Ironman, it's like really sort of like a highly structured, high intensity, no nonsense kind of approach. A lot of the people there are just down for business. And like it's very much that type of an energy. And Ultra, it's kind of like a music festival, is the best way to put it. It's a little bit like informal, it's a little bit laid back. So I think we were able to just tap in a little bit to that energy of what an ultra is to give us a little bit more of a calm nerve, right? The most lights I think that you'd get at that start was the gigantic line of cars just trying to get into the parking lot. Like when you get to the actual race scene, there's the race start, but there's some campers, there's a few tents. It's just a very, I would say, a very open and inviting environment for a race where anxiety is not as present as you might expect when you're starting out a gigantic race. So I just want to say like the overall environment of an ultra, I think, helped put us a little bit more at ease as well, because it's not really a high stakes. It doesn't feel as much as a high stakes environment, and I could be wrong on that. So if I am, please correct me.
Well, I would say
But I
that the
but
main distinction here is that an Ironman starts with the swim, and most people are freaking out about the swim. So the first thing that
there you
you
go.
do is go right into something that it's not physically harder of an effort than the ultra. I mean, maybe the ultra is a little bit easier. The whole Ironman thing is generally an easier effort unless you're freaking racing it. But for almost everybody, it's like they are immediately facing something that's hard. That's the difference.
Perfect. No, that's a great little distinction there too, right? So there's nothing too scary about that first couple miles, right?
No,
Because
there's
it's like,
nothing
well, I
scary
have,
about it at all. And you get running 5 feet and you're like, well, I mean, this is it.
yeah, and you're
Whereas
in
like in
it,
the
and
Ironman, it's like 5 feet to get into the water. Then you've got waves crashing, right? Then there's freaking
feet and
finding out how to swim
hands, and
amongst everybody.
yeah. Okay, so that's great. That's a great distinction out there. Thank you. So no, just calm. I those first 10 miles, and especially once we kind of got up onto that gooseberry trail up on that mesa, that was like that was the reward. That was the reward for all of the work that we'd done. Getting to see like the sun starting to crest up over those mountain ranges, just taking in the natural beauty and the awe of the area. Um, I'm
Yeah, so let me give you a note here because I have some of those ideas from Gooseberry Trail. So we get
Yep.
6 miles in, and then we hit the first aid station. And we don't totally need a ton of aid. I mean, water refill would be great, right? But we're 6 miles in, a little over an hour for us. But it gave us a good first rep on like what is the aid station like. And the aid station setup was they had these water buffaloes that were these massive drums of water that had probably 8 spigots around them that you could fill up your waters. Then they had a table that usually had some other coolers that had like the sports mix that they provided or the electrolyte mix that they provided. Then they had a couple of like 8x8 tents set up, and that's where they'd have like tables that had the food that was stocked at the aid station. That could have been anything from fruit slices to pretzels to quesadillas to even like candy type stuff. It was a big wide variety. So we got up there, didn't really need the aid station that much, but grabbed a couple of things. Um, and then we headed off onto basically our first mesa of the day. And this was that Gooseberry Trail. That aid station was called Gooseberry. And yeah, in my note here, I have written down that this was our "we're really here" moment. And we're running along this trail that's on the edge of this mesa, which is an important distinction because we'll talk about the inner parts of the mesa eventually. We're on the edge of this flat mesa, and we're on this really beautiful trail that's just like kind of bumping and winding along the edge of this mesa. There's some boulders, there's some stones, but it's mostly a bit of a dirt trail that's easy on the feet, easily runnable. We're going under and around some trees. The sun is starting to come up, but we've got this beautiful kind of like 30-minute window of daybreak where it's light, but the sun hasn't reached over the mountains in the back. But we can totally see out, and we can just see this vast expanse of there's freaking desert everywhere, but we're on this massive mesa. We can see these other mesas, out in the distance. And just like the magnitude of it, like we knew that the challenge was going to be epic, but in my mind, at that moment, it was even grander than I had ever imagined. It was just like breathtaking. And we're all still fresh, right? We're getting into being 2 hours, 3 hours in. And I remember saying to somebody, I'm like, this has flown by faster than any 2 or 3 hour trail run I've ever done in my life. Like, this is just beautiful. And we eventually, I'll kick it over at the turnaround point, but we eventually make it to this turnaround point that's out on like this peak of the mesa. And that was really cool because that turnaround point, it's still early in the race. We're around other runners. There were runners from the 100K that had even come up and like passed up ahead of us now. And there were a lot of people there just like taking in the scene. Like it was a low pressure thing, right? It's like people taking the phones out, they're taking pictures. And what I really liked about that turnaround is that that became a reference point for the entire remainder of the day. As we are running all over this freaking desert, like I thought it was really cool to always be able to look back and be like, we were freaking up there, man. We were up there. Then we went all the way over the top of the mesa, all the way down, all the way into the canyon. And like now we're up on this other mesa. And it was just like, I don't think I've ever had a reference point like that in a run. I mean, sometimes you're in the mountains, you can be like, damn, it was all the way over there, but like not in this way. And so I thought that was really special. What else you got from Gooseberry?
Tourist vibes would be the
Tourist
best way to
vibes.
tourist vibes. It's like everybody up there who's not really there to set some sort of like performance distance is relaxing and taking their time and really soaking it in, because that was, and this was sort of in the race description, like this is the highlight. This is the highlight of the course in terms of the views, in terms of where you get to be. And I think maybe like, and this is something I've been thinking about, it's like maybe we were a little bit too relaxed in that
We'll get to
kind
that
of
point.
in that portion of it, but like I would rather have drunk all of that in on the top of the mesa as our celebration for all the hard work, um, than to just have this militant, right? Like we're here to get it done. It's like this whole organic flow, this ideal of emergence just allowed us to, I think, really appreciate that. And if we had just zoomed through that, I think we would have missed something pretty big.
I don't actually think that we
Um,
were going to I thought we were going just at a fine pace there. I don't think we were doing anything lackadaisical. This is where we start to hit about 3 hours. There was also a really cool moment because all of a sudden, Jamie and I were up in the front and I paused to take a leak. And all of a sudden I hear this buzzing and I look up and there's a freaking drone. And I'm like, oh shit, that's Charlie. And I look over the edge of the mesa and you can see down to the road and I see three cars parked. I can see that one of them's mine. I'm like, that's them. That's the freaking drone. I got the air tag in my fanny pack, so they found us. And Charlie just got some unreal footage of us running along basically the edge of this mesa, bumping along this trail. This was also the first point where I had paused up and I wanted to make sure that I could let everybody get through and past me so that I could start to check in on how everybody was doing. And at this point, I would say that um, around two groups had formed, kind of like a front pack and kind of like a backpack. And at this point in the race, it was still early enough where that wasn't necessarily a distinction of who's feeling great and who's not. There was a little bit of intermingling between those. We hadn't gone that far that there was much distance being built between the two groups. But in terms of our overall pacing and how people were feeling, at this point, we're 10, 12 miles in. This is how, we're starting to just check in and monitor how the entire unit is moving together. Um, I would say that after that point, around where we saw Charlie and the drone, that is where the trail headed into the center of the mesa. And the centers of these mesas were very challenging, very challenging. The mesas are dead flat. Like you look at them from a distance and it looks like it's a freaking tabletop. Mesa, I think, literally translates to table. But on these mesas, there are these boulders that could be anything from something that, they've got like this bike trail that you can easily kind of scoot around on to boulders that are the size of like school buses. And so we get into some of this terrain and can just definitely feel that, like, it's a little bit more challenging than the trail and the dirt road that we've been on so far. Very hard to find a rhythm. You're kind of bracing weight in different directions. Some of these rocks, you're like sort of scaling right up over the front face of them. Sometimes you're running around them. In terms of following the route, there were two main things up until this point of the race. On the mesa, they have these white dots on the ground that laid out the bike trails, would have been mountain bike trails. And then the race also specifically had these ribbons that were pink, and then one that was like a glittery one that would be reflective in the night. Um, at this point, we're then making our way to the second aid station, which is at mile 14. And at this point, we're like through sunrise and we're starting to feel that it's warming a little bit. So we get to aid stop at mile 14. I know that I took off my jacket. I know that at this point, I did some electrolyte checks on guys. I remember checking with Josh Payne. How many electrolytes have you had? We're about 3 hours into this race now. So we want to make sure that like our systems are flowing because we're also like starting to really head into the day. And the real morning thing is behind us now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's definitely some different phases of the race, and that first sort of 10, 14 miles was one particular phase. And when you're out in the desert, you're at the mercy, when you're on any trail, you're at the mercy of the environment. And I think this is when the real education started for a lot of people on what it's like to be out on trails and what it's out to be like on variable trails, where you're talking about different terrains, different surfaces, different flow states. Like, it's easy to flow on a dirt path, but when you are on boulders and rocks, like, it's an entirely different type of rhythm that you have to establish in order to feel comfortable. And that can be a tricky thing to figure out in real time in a race. uh and this is probably when the monumental weight of the challenge was starting to dawn on people, because that initial euphoria of just, we're here, we're doing it, look at these views, this is amazing. Now we're starting to now it's starting to turn into more of like, business is starting to like emerge in front of us, and it's not easy, and we got to start taking care of it. And
Yeah, I
that started with the descent, eh?
yeah. I loved what you said about Cam actually in the beginning, and this idea that like there is this part of the mind that's like, oh, I want to do the hard thing, but I don't want it to be that hard. And I want to get the finish line that's the breakthrough. And in reality, we were all brought to different points where our breakthrough was waiting for us in a decision that we didn't want to make and a state that we didn't want to be in. And I would say that that was just something that is definitely coming up around the bend for us. So, yeah, we get back to we've hit the aid station at around 14, and then we have like a 3.5 mile stretch until 17.7, and that's the next aid station. And the part from 14 to 17.7, that was a little bit like sandier desert style terrain that was still on top of this mesa, but we had sort of emerged out of that boulder field. And at this point, the day is definitely warming up. We get to the 17.7 aid station, which was actually the same location as that first one at 6. So we had done like a loop on that mesa top. And this was the first aid station that we expected to hit for our drop bags. So this was the first like real one. I mean, we definitely got lots of fuel at the 14 aid station, but at 17.7, we had drop bags waiting for us with our specific fuel. And at this point, like, I remember at this point, like, I felt good. Like, I was like, all right, I'm in, like, we're in it here. Like, this is the thing. Like, we're making moves now. And we had been moving at a good pace that I felt confident about where we were at. This aid station was sitting directly at basically the start of this mesa from whatever the other freaking geological structure is. And we head down this descent that is the steepest and longest trail descent that any of us had ever been on. It was nearly 2 miles, and it was upwards of 2,000 feet. I don't know if it was quite 2,000 feet. Very technical, exposed rock, um, basically just coming right down the face of this mesa that's just like a freaking sheet, right? So the trail kind of does one little switchback, and it was steep enough that you couldn't totally dictate your speed. Or maybe a better way to say that is that you couldn't totally go super slow. Like any step you took, like your momentum is carrying you. And so it was, pretty taxing on the quads. Anything that drops you in that much is gonna wake you up a little bit. We're still feeling good at that point, though, I'd say. We get to the bottom of that, and we have a couple more miles before we arrive to what I believe is the next water buffalo at somewhere around 21. So the descent is 17.7 to nearly 20, I'd say. And then we have another
That's about
mile or
right.
so into the canyon floor that is the next water buffalo. So do you have anything else from that descent or that section as we're heading into the belly of the beast?
The technical ability was not a joke. Like, this is super steep. And when you say like loose rock, we're talking not like just a little bit of pebbles. We're talking big rocks that
Are
you
not
put your
stable.
foot on. They're not stable. And not only is that a danger for your foot, but you kick that down the trail, And the thing about this descent was there's still a lot of people. So you have to imagine a giant line of
A
people.
lot of
So
people.
it's not like we're just doing it on our own. We kind of are queued up. And you could kick a rock down, who knows what that could do. So you're not just aware of what your steps are, you have to be aware of what other people are also doing up on the trail. And the danger is real. Like, this is not a safe place. You have to really be focused and dialed in on every single little detail. And one of the things that differentiates trail running from other types of running is the mental taxation that plays on you. Having to be exposed to dangerous situations where it's not just like a little bit of injury is on the table, it's like falling off the side of a mountain injury is on the table. And that could be the final injury. And that just alerts stress in your body that is playing on this background. So even if you're not aware of it, you are draining energy from yourself in a much faster way than you are in other kinds of experiences. And this is like things are building up in the background exponentially, right? So we all know like kind of what happens with a parabola or a bell curve or an exponent, where you're on the bottom axis and it looks like things are not really moving, and then all of a sudden something shoots up or shoots down. So I would suggest that mental stress of realizing the difficulty of the terrain is also playing in with the actual difficulty of the terrain. So it's really like a two-pronged attack on you that the trail is providing. And this is about to materialize, I think, at the bottom when we start getting into these windy bike trails, effectively just on the open exposed desert floor.
Yeah, so I would say also along that line, notable that at this point we have been on probably 5 different types of terrain. We started on the dirt road, then we had the gooseberry, then we had the central section of the mesa, then we had some more sandy type of trail that got us to the 17.7, and then we had this crazy technical descent. And yeah, that's all kind of just going on, and what we're just like sort of subconsciously taking on. And as soon as we get down to the canyon floor, I would say that it's instantly 20 degrees hotter than it was up on the mesa. One, we were on the mesa 2,000 feet higher up, but we were also up there in the morning. So now we're down into the canyon floor. And at this point now, it's getting into the late morning. You know, at this point, we're getting close to mile 20, which I think off the top of my head, trying to just do quick math. I don't know. Must have been around 11 o'clock or something like that, 12
Yeah,
o'clock.
somewhere between 5 and 6 hours.
5 and 6 hours, right? Because we hit the gooseberry aid stop at about 5 hours. So yeah, we're about 6 to even maybe 6 to 7 hours in, and we get down to this canyon floor, and yeah, the canyon floor, it's basically like these 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 winding ravines almost, where you could ride bikes through them, but it's not like a single track bike trail. It's more of like a wide, almost like a road that you could drive a Jeep on, honestly. And at this point, we carry on 2 more miles until we hit this water buffalo. And I would say that at the water buffalo, for the most part, we were still doing solid. I remember in my mind thinking that I would have preferred if that was a full aid station rather than just the water buffalo. But for the most part, the team was doing well. I think heading out of this is where we see our first signs of struggle.
Yeah. I mean, you're the one who's sort of in tune with everybody. Like at this point, I would say everyone is running their own race, in terms of just like 100% just focusing on themselves, because we expect and assume, right, that everybody else kind of has their stuff together. But you're the one who's got to have the pulse on everybody. And I would just preface this. Um, there is something about live coaching somebody through an effort when you're also doing the effort that I want people to appreciate how much you have to give away. Like, you've never run a 100-mile race before. And if you're just doing it on your own, it's incredibly difficult and taxing. So you're not only doing that, but you're responsible now for 8 other people, right? And those people's performances are also weighing on you. And you can't just focus on what's my calorie intake, how many electrolytes have I had, what's my hydration, where are the little niggles starting to happen in my body. You've got to do that for every other person. So as you start to feel the energy and some of the people you coach starting to drop, you've got to now marshal what you need to get yourself through the race. Now you got to start giving it away to other people. So I really need people who are listening to appreciate just how difficult this is. I saw Ryan do this last year at the 50K, the Mo, the full Mo in Indy. This is like when I was determined to somehow find my way into the structure of his team because I'd never seen anything so awesome before. But a 50K on a flat trail in Indy is not this. This is not this. Okay. And eventually I'm gonna have to find myself in the same situation. So I really appreciated and got the lesson of just what this does to you as somebody who's not only responsible for your own performance, but responsible for the safety and the performance of the people who have put their trust into you. Um, so you're rightfully the first person to notice this energy drop, or that some of the people in the team are starting to struggle. And I think, at least from my perspective, we've got a crew. We get to see the crew for the very first time. So we get to see our supporters, our pacers at mile, what, 25, just over 25. It's like almost 26. So it's basically like, for me, it's like the first marathon from my perspective is like everybody is good,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that things go bad. But for you, you're like, no, people were starting to fade even coming into that station. So we didn't really even know. We didn't have a
Yeah.
sense. We didn't have a sense, but you did.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, dude. One thing that was just extremely apparent with that big tactical descent is that it's like no one's ever been on shit like this before. And I'm thinking of like Libby, who trained in like Alabama trails that have a little bit of elevation, but like this is a totally different world. And even the trails that like Josh Payne got to train on in Nashville, like I've been on those specific trails, nothing like this, right? Even me, who lives in freaking Boulder, man, I'm like, I've been on some gnarly shit. I ain't never been on anything like this. So I was definitely starting to pay more attention and be more in tune with how this two group situation was starting to become a little bit of a who feels stronger and who isn't feeling so great. And I want to give a huge shout out to Jamie Bowron, just like a leader in all areas of life. Firefighter back in Oakland, one of the best firefighters in the whole country, and he was supportive as eyes on the ground in a way for me, where he was giving me some insight on, this person so and so, this person this. You might want to check in on that. I don't know them as well as you, right? But you might want to know. And so this was the point where I started to fade towards the back. And I wanted to bring up the backpack. And we had a couple of athletes who were just feeling hot, man. I mean, it's hot down there, right? And we're 25 plus, or I guess at this point, like about 22 plus miles into this race, 7 hours or so. And one thing that really stuck out to me was that I could have improved as a coach, delivering more tactical instruction on form and how to use poles. And I was starting to see that a couple athletes in the back were trying to just default to thinking that being in a running stride the whole time is better. And so I got to do just some live coaching of like, dude, you're eating. Like, stop trying to run. Like, just walk and just eat. But when we're walking, like, let's walk with purpose. And if you're not eating, we can still be walking, but like, let's use the poles and let's walk with intention here. And I was also starting to observe as I'm checking in, like, how are you doing? I was starting to hear like some lethargic responses, I'd say, from some of the folks who were feeling it a little bit more than others. Maybe referencing a niggle or so. My hamstring is hurting. My foot is kind of barking. I had to stretch my calf out, which is really difficult to figure out as an athlete, right? Like, do you vocalize that thing that you want to address, or is your vocalization of it reaffirming that you're not feeling well? And is that really spiraling into kind of more negativity? So The other thing that I learned a lot as a coach in this stretch specifically is the value of your posture and body language. Poor posture and kind of a slouching body language, that shit fucks you up, man. That shit fucks you up. That gets into your nervous system, that gets into your mindset, that makes it feel okay to vocalize more pain and more hurt. And you're not going to make it as far as you want to go if that's what's going on. And so I really just like took it upon myself at the time. I was like, I got to get some shit together for some folks. And so I stayed in the back through the 25.8 aid station. And this was the crew aid, right? And so in my mind, when we headed into this thing, I was kind of like, all right, well, we'll get to the marathon mark and we'll see the crew and it'll be early. And we hadn't even considered using a pacer then because we were just like, it's going to be great vibes. Like we're going to be riding high. And
We
we
weren't
had to
allowed to use a
work.
pacer.
What's that?
We're not allowed to take a pacer until 50.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But anyway, we were basically just like, we're good to go here. And so I came in, I stayed in the back and brought the anchor, the team in, um, through that aid station. And one thing that I will say tactically about how the race was unfolding is that at this point, I don't know if it was a combination of pacing around at aid stations and walking back and forth from stuff or bathroom stops, but everybody's watch was signaling farther than the aid station number markers that we knew. So when we rolled into the 25.8 aid station, my watch was already well over 26. And so that was a little bit of a start, I'd say, of not having complete confidence in how far away from the next aid station we were and what we needed to buckle into.
Great point. Uncertainty is like where panic comes, and panic on the trails is you're done. Like the thing that I talked about so much in the house is we never want to feel rushed. I don't want to feel rushed doing anything, whether that's in the house preparing or whether that's on the trail. And the second panic starts to fit into your mind, that's rushing because you're just like, I need to get this panic out of me. And the only way I can get the panic out of me is to get to the aid station. I don't know where the aid station is. I don't know where the trail goes, but I know that I need to start to move a little bit with I need maybe move outside of my comfort zone towards it. So panic, rushing, stress, the moment any of these enter the equation, it's only a matter of time.
Right.
It's only a matter of time.
Right. And so we get into this aid station, and I was feeling pretty good when we got there. I mean, I was excited to get there for sure. But we had seen Charlie. He came out with the camera and got some footage of us kind of coming in. Saw the whole rest of the crew: Madison, Lath, Mike D was there, Lynn. I believe Cam was there as well.
Yep, Cam was definitely
And
there.
at this aid station, this was the first point that I was really intentional with certain athletes standing at the water buffalo and slamming over a liter of water. I really saw very quickly that, listen, these aid stops, we thought that they were really, really frequent throughout the race. And, you know, who knows, they may be relative to other races, but we were out there for a while and we were excited to get into that one. And so if you're coming in, maybe being a little bit dehydrated, and then if you're just filling up your flasks for the next segment, you are just digging a hole. So we needed to be using those aid stations to not just get the fuel we needed to keep going, but we needed them to refuel and already start to catch up on where we were at. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Brandon because Brandon was really receptive of that. I was like, dude, let's go. Like, sit with me, stand with me here. Like, let's take down 3 of our flasks here. Let's get a liter and a half of water. Like, this is what we need to turn this thing around here. I will say that one thing that I wasn't totally conscious of is the fact that I came into that aid station last. And so I was a little bit rushed coming out. In the aid station, I was fine, right? We were checking on people. People were bringing me stuff. I got a coconut water. I got some of the sourdough bagels that I had. I got my water refilled. But all of a sudden, somebody like calls out to me, one of the crew members, and they're like, Ryan, like everybody already left. I'm like, what the fuck? And I had been leading the sound off 1 to 9 before we left every aid stop. But I guess we just moved along without that happening. And so I look up and everybody's at the start of the trail. And I just grabbed my stuff. And it wasn't like had tons that I didn't get to do, but like that idea of rushing, I think that that was the first moment that settled into my mind. And I would say that all of that situation relative to the desert floor, the canyon floor coming into that aid stop, we go to that aid stop, but then basically head right back into the same shit. The trail was slightly different. This was more of like true like mountain bike trails, so more narrow trail and more like up and down winding. I remember that one specific, like punchy little freaking punchy little
Yeah.
hill. It's like almost as if you just had to like walk over a house.
I
That's
think I
almost
have
what
a
it was
picture.
like.
I think I have a picture of Dylan going over that one because it stood out. I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," because I'm kind of a loser.
Yeah. And at this point, I was looking on my Training Peaks file, and it has the temperature logged
Mm.
throughout the race. And you can just see this freaking steady rise from the start of the race right until about this moment at about mile 27, right, which is about what my watch said. And the heat essentially looks like a freaking mesa at that point. Like it creates a big plateau. And so we start to enter essentially the heat of the day, and it stays essentially there, probably climbing up a degree or two for the next 15 miles from 27 to 42. So we're going out through this BMX trail, and I would say that at this point, it became really clear that there was like a lead group feeling better, and then there was a back group that wasn't feeling as strong. And I'm staying with the back group, trying to make sure that things are going well. I think at this point you were still up in the up group. You were kind of shifting between it at this point. Um, we eventually come up, and there was a road that the trail crossed over, and we actually were able to see the crew again at about mile 30. So they handed off a little bit of water to some folks that I think might have needed it, but we weren't really preparing for that to be anything super specific. And at this point, in my own mind, I realized I can't be in the back the whole time. I cannot be in the back the whole time. It's fucking me up a little bit too much. And so at this point, I remember we're 9 hours in. And I remember saying to Charlie on the camera, I was like, "We got breaking news, man. I just turned it around, in the sense that the past couple of miles I had to earn a little bit." And so at this mile 30 point, Trevor and I take off from the front. And I'm like, I want to log some miles here, and I want to get myself back to feeling like I know I can feel. And we lay down some great freaking miles. Um, Clip off probably close to two or three, and we're seeing the group a little bit behind us, but we're making a little bit more of a way. And we start to enter a new style of terrain where it's like these desert hills. There's a little bit of greenery, some desert shrubbery, and we're kind of winding through. We're not really going over these hills. We're more like winding through them. Right. And I think we all had seen this yellow truck up over this hill crest that we thought was the next aid station we're getting to. It wasn't. So we definitely were getting to a point of like, where the fuck is this next water buffalo? And Trevor and I got to a point where like, where's this water buffalo? But then also, where's the group? And so we hold up on the trail and we wait for the group to catch up. Only took a couple of minutes, but we had gone. That was the point in the day that I was the farthest ahead of anybody. I was never really up ahead of anybody beyond sight at any other point. And at this point, once the group comes up, Louis comes up to me and he's like, we need to check in on a couple of folks. There's starting to be a significant distinction in how people are feeling, I suppose. What would you say before we get to what goes down to the water buffalo? What would you say about that section of the trail?
In terms of like my experience, I just think it's exactly what you mentioned. I was realizing in real time that people in the back needed support. They needed
Mm-hmm.
help. So I made this kind of conscious move to just be the person in the back to lead up, like
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that people were not falling too far behind. Because I noticed that when you went up, like there was a little bit of a lack of that urgency and that energy. And I tried to start to assume a little bit of that guiding role, but I would say at this moment for me, it wasn't acute. Like it was mostly like, okay, we're starting to get into like little, because I wasn't as tuned in as you were. So I'm just
Sure.
thinking, oh, this is kind of the beginning. So we can just sort of mosey in. Personally, for me, this is coming up to that aid station, right? Like the one where the meth heads were
We're not there
running it or
yet. We're not
whatever.
there yet.
We're still not even there yet. Okay. So I'm just, for me, I'm kind of like just in prof mode, like conversation. Like let's just have
Yep.
these let's have conversations, let's talk. Um, and physically I'm just feeling great the whole day. Like, so I feel as if I've got the ability to help people in that area because I'm not needing to focus on myself. Um, so I'm starting to realize what my position is and what my place is in the race. It hasn't
Yeah.
fully dawned on me yet. Hasn't I don't need to realize it in this moment, but I would say I'm starting to realize what's happening. A little
Yep.
bit later than you, but I'm trying to act in a way that's going to mitigate um any sort of potential long-term hurt to the team. The one thing I definitely remember about that is it just feels like convection. It just feels like the heat's all around you. It's not as if it's like the sun, it's just kind of like everything. It's like, so there's the sun, there's the dry air, there's the heat that's emanating up off of the trail and off of all of the rocks coming down on you from all different directions. So it really does just feel like you're getting roasted, and not like in a very intense fashion, because we're not running in like 90 plus degrees here. We're running in like sort of like low 80s, but there's no shade, right? I remember up on top of that mesa commenting to Dylan, I'm really happy with all the shade we're hitting here from these trees on the off sides of some of these boulders. And
Yep.
there was nothing like that down on that floor. There was no reprieve, there was no shade. You might get a little bit of a desert breeze every once in a while, but sometimes that would actually be worse depending on how that breeze was hitting, and it could actually increase the temperature. So you are getting roasted. You're getting roasted down there, kind of like slowly and surely. And it's another one of these just exponential build kind of things. And it's a physical thing. So you're slowly cooking. You're slowly cooking down there.
Yeah, and
So
also
that
just
would be
like
the
the
one thing.
dichotomy of us having started in the morning, like it's so apparent that it's different. And we are
Yep.
now nearing 10 hours into this event, right? Like the
Yes.
morning felt crisp, all that jazz. So we get to this water buffalo, and um, I basically tell the team, let's huddle up here.
Yeah.
Um, and my decision at this point is I want to be intentional with the order in which we're running so that we can break this pattern of strong people feeling like they can go up front and weak people feeling like they're in the back, and this uh, quiet stress on both parties where the people in the front are like, fuck, how the people in the back feeling. The people in the back are like, fuck, I'm going slower. I can't keep up, right? Like I wanted to break that. And I wanted to get everybody into a mindset where they were working together as a unit. I was starting to see that the separation was creating some individualized suffering. And I wanted to bring people together for um, to lean on the strength of what I thought we showed up with, right? Which is the idea of the team, the whole idea of the team. And so I basically tell everybody, listen, let's acknowledge this for what it is. We're in the heat of the day right here. So if you're feeling bad and if you're feeling like you're working, like that's okay, right? Like this is the section of the course where we're supposed to be working, right? So let's at least just accept that.
Yeah.
And let's be at peace with that. And let's
Yeah.
use some strategy to combat that. And let's adapt a little bit here. And so the order that I went with was Louis up front, Brandon in second, me in third, then the pairing of Trevor and Libby behind me, the pairing of you and Spina behind them, and then Jamie and Josh Payne to bring up the back. Um, I had I had seen that I could put a lot of faith in Jamie and Josh Payne, both of them. Jamie was feeling strong, and my best miles of the day were nearly always when I was running with Josh Payne. So I was like, those guys, I can rely on those guys to keep good vibes in the back, because the other thing that I wanted to combat is like, I don't want the back to just be bad vibes. Like, this is all about vibes. I don't want
Oh
bad
yeah.
vibes in the back. I want good vibes in the back. And so I need two dudes back there that I can totally rely on. And we set out from there, and we headed on to another, I would say, new style of terrain, where we
Yes.
exit out of sort of this basin of these desert hills, and we move up towards like being on top of this almost like mountainside in a way. Like, it wasn't like we were up on top of a mesa, but we were still running along stuff where we were really high up. But we
Yep.
weren't really getting like the heat reprieve. I guess we were still in the desert floor.
Yeah.
But there was like a river
It's
way down below. So I don't know. There's like freaking tiers to this thing.
it's crazy. I remember running a lot next to like a dried up creek bed and crossing a lot of dried up creek beds in that section. And it was very just rocky up and down. I remember that section really well in terms of its
Yeah.
terrain. It was single track and it was tricky. Like it was a lot of it was a lot of tough steps
Yep.
for people for people for sure.
And so from my observation, we generally maintained that order as people had to pee and stuff. It got slightly adjusted, but we put in a good stretch from there. And we are coming around this bend, and we see the aid station that we're heading to. And it's a little bit of a mirage, because we think we're going to be there pretty quickly, but we get sent around this whole other horseshoe bend that adds probably 30 or 40 minutes before we get there. And I would say that in that stretch of the race, which is somewhere around 35, maybe, I would say that that was the stretch where we got a little bit lackadaisical with our pacing and our effort. And maybe that was a reflection of the order that I'd set up. I'm not really sure. But we did a little bit too much walking when we could have been continuing with a bit of a run walk rhythm. But again, we're in the freaking heat of the day, man, and we've been out there for 11 hours. So we're trying to balance all these different things. And I think that we're all leaning on a little bit of hope that I'll feel better at the aid station. So if I can just get to the aid station, but then the aid station is farther away and taking longer to get to. And I would say that that was um, definitely the second stop that took longer to get to. Maybe the 25.8 aid stop took longer, but definitely that 31 water buffalo. Like, we thought we were going to get there sooner. And definitely this next aid station, we thought we were going to get there sooner. And we show up to this aid station, and this is where panic sets in. We show up to this aid station, and they are basically breaking it down. And it's totally underfueled relative to the other aid stations that we had been to. It didn't have a full water buffalo. It just had a table with some coolers. Most of the food that was supposed to be set out was completely taken down. And we're like, what's going on? And the people who we have dubbed as the meth heads running the aid station, they're like, oh yeah, this aid station was supposed to be closed at 3:15 and it's 3:40. And we're like, what the fuck? And aid station being closed means that the sweeper is coming and that you're supposed to be through that. Otherwise, you're out of the race. And we're like, holy shit. So Louis whips out his pace chart. And at this point, we realize that we are about 90 minutes behind the pace that we had set. But this aid station is supposed to be open for another 2 hours. This lady was supposed to be working a different aid station. And so she was referencing the time from that aid station. We were completely fine on that aid station's pacing. Again, it was about 3:40. That aid station was supposed to be open until 5:50, but we were behind schedule. And this is where this idea of rushing and urgency, I would say that this is where it like really sets in for everybody. And we basically try to hightail it out of there essentially as quickly as possible. We take a couple of minutes to fuel up, but like, we don't have the mindset of we can take 15 minutes. Like, we have the mindset of we should already be out of here. Shit, let's go. And before getting into maybe what happens next, what was your perspective from that aid station?
Panic. Like it's the energy change was so dramatic. It's difficult to recover when you're already hurting and when you're looking for the aid station as like your oasis and your reprieve, and it turns out to be the nightmare. Like you talk about getting kicked when you're down. Like if I was and I'm not physically struggling, but if I was physically struggling, this is going to be so demoralizing. And just like, so not only is this not an oasis, but I'm now the reason why we're late and that we're out of the race. And then it's like, well, now even if I now know that we're in the race, it's like I've just literally been crushed. I'm so tired. I'm hurting. Like my body is physically hurting. I'm already feeling in the pits because it's clear to me that I'm one of the ones that's struggling. And like that's the greatest fear of everybody in one of these team situations is that you're the slowest link, like that you're the one who can't keep up, and then you're the one who's dragging everybody else down. This is why Hero Cam, with his power move at the very beginning, he realized that, right? But it's a different thing to see it unfold in real time, and now you're the one who's doing it. So it's not just like the physical pain that you're in, but it's like the emotional and spiritual pain that you're in. And you're looking for anything to get you out of it. And you get to the aid station, and it's the worst thing you could even imagine. The
Yeah.
worst thing you could even imagine. So, like, wow. My own personal experience is this is the part of the race where I have my own personal breakthrough. So for me, this is a totally different vibe than what's going on with the rest of the team. And I'm kind of in this, I'm not afraid to it. It's kind of like I'm in a little bit of a selfish moment here, personally, but without this realization of myself, like I'm not able to probably summon the strength and the courage for what is about to be asked of me in the next kind of like 10 miles. So we don't have to get into that. We can, doesn't matter
Well,
to
why don't you
me,
just
but
share it? Because I
like,
don't really know exactly what you're talking about.
okay, so when you put Josh and Jamie at the back with him and I, like I ended up in this long conversation with Josh. Really great. Like we're just exchanging life stories and like kind of like who we are as people. And it turns out like we're similar. Like we're similar in terms of like our intelligence and our aptitude and the things that normally like we're guys that things normally come easy to. Like and whatever we sort of try, we always seem to find success, right? And it's not a brag or anything. It's just that's our experience. That's our experience, like in school, sports, and like in all these different things. So we're having these sort of like good bonding moments, and I forget exactly how the conversation turned to this, but all of a sudden, and I'm
And this is
talking to
again
him.
coming out of, because now I'm picking up on where this is headed, and I didn't know about this. So this is
Yeah,
coming out of the panic aid station, setting up then what I know we'll be
this
getting
is
to.
this is coming into the aid station. So I'm having this gigantic conversation with Josh as we're coming into the
Into the
aid
panic aid
station.
station.
Into the panic aid station. Okay. And it I'm talking to him about my own personal like, so what stopped you from being a prof? And it's like, oh well, here we go. So I talked to him a little bit about the free speech stuff and probably getting put on a blacklist about, having my career destroyed effectively, and like what happened to me. And then the conversation turns to World War II somehow. And it's just how these things happen. And he's like, the
Oh, I
Nazis.
remember this now.
Of
Yeah.
course you remember it. It's like impossible to forget, but there's just so many things that happen in the race, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I start, he's like, the Nazis, man, that's so messed up. Like, how could that have even have happened? So I'm just like, oh, you want to know something? I come from a family of Holocaust survivors. And so it ends up me telling him the story of my grandfather, who's like my greatest inspiration in terms of like live life by your heart, live life by your principles, like, and just don't be afraid of whatever is difficult in your life. And I've told the story a lot of times, right? But I hadn't told the story in such detail and depth for probably about 3 years. And I've been on my own sort of like tumultuous journey. And so it's a very heavy conversation, and I'm just spilling out the beans, and it's really great. It's beautiful. Josh is just a great conversationalist, and just a great dude with a great heart. So everything is great. And we come into the aid station and there's the panic and there's whatever. And I remember leaving the aid station, we kind of go on a little bit of a turn, and then it's like a little bit of a down and then an uphill turn. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the back. And I come up on this uphill turn and I see my 8 teammates all running in the desert, like, and the vista is just incredibly beautiful and everything. And the weight of my own struggles, being effectively fired and ostracized and having to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing in life because I'm not doing the thing that I thought I was going to be doing, and family issues and my own mistakes in the whole process. And then I fit that in with my grandfather's story, I think probably for the first time. And
Mm.
it was like a lightning bolt of emotion. And I actually started to walk the other direction because I was sobbing. I was at the back. If you can imagine walking the opposite direction on the trail, that's
Mm.
how impacted I was, because I was losing it. I was
Mm.
losing it. And it was Brandon was at the back, and he's the one who's kind of been like hurting. And so he looks at me, he's like, "Oh my gosh, like what's going on with you, dude?" Because I look like a mess. And I'm like, "No, no, no, it's all good. It's like it's all positive emotion. It's all good, but like I'm heavy. It's very heavy." I explained to him. So he's like, "Okay." So he's him and I are running, and I'm no joke. I'm sobbing as we're running, just like tears are streaming down my face as we're going. And then I see you and Trevor, and this is just so funny. Like you look at me, you're like, what is wrong with you, dude? You look like you are dying. Like, we need to help you. What's going on? And I say the same thing. I'm like, oh no, no, like it's okay. And I tell you the story, and I just Trevor's. I love Trevor so much. Trevor's like, you know what? The best answer you could have ever have given. Like, you're fine. Like, no worries. Like, let's go. Um, so that was my moment. And it was like that was the breakthrough I think that I was there to get. So it's
Oh,
like
wow.
we aren't even 40 miles into the race. And I'm like, this is it. Like, what could be any more powerful than this realization of place and purpose and path and belief? And I've been unmoored for many years now, and it's been really difficult for me. And it's like in that moment it was like, no, right place, right time, right moment. This is where you need to be. This is where you belong. This is where you deserve. And I think most importantly, it's like this is where you deserve to be. So like accept it and embrace it and stop being scared, right? So that was what was personally going on for me in those moments, and it's about to pay monster dividends coming up when it comes to the team. So that's a little bit of that how
Yeah.
that aid station worked for me.
Yeah. I remember standing on the trail because this was another moment where I decide that I'm going to stand here and I want to let everybody run through and I need to be checking on every single person. And you come up and sobbing, I would not even say remotely describes what's going on with you emotionally. I see
It
your
was bro. I
face
was
and
it
I'm
was just
like, dude,
broken.
are you okay? Like, what is going on? And I didn't, you're like, oh, I'm fine, dude. I just told Josh about, I think, my grandfather's Holocaust survivor story. And I just remember, like, I went from seeing your face and a little bit being like, "Are you fucking kidding me? What is going on, Goldstein?" to then you saying that and me being like, "Holy cow, what the holy shit, dude." Wow, that's special. And let me give you some space to sit with that because I know that just space is what you typically want and need. And
Yeah.
so yeah, dude, that's a very important wrinkle in the story. So thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for giving me the space to share it. It was it was so incredibly powerful. That's why I had to walk the opposite direction on the trail, which is insane.
Yeah. Um, So that's leading into the panic aid station. We head out of the panic aid station, and a big, uh, a big overall breakthrough, I would say, for me was the realization that you can't bring people along by being the person in front all the time. And in my own life with Chels, like I used to try to ride with her and get her to go faster by just riding in front. And I realized in this moment here, coming out of this aid station, because I like peeled out. And so my kind of default, as we'll eventually get to in my own race story, like my default is if we're behind, I got to go. If I'm behind, I got to go. And so I break off out of this trail, and it's Louie and I. And Josh Payne was like sitting lying back. He's like, I got to go to the bathroom, dude. I'm like, all right, fuck. But I can trust you to go figure that out. So like you get going, but like don't allow you lingering to allow other people to linger. Like we need as a unit to be moving out of here. And I'm up with Louie, and pretty much instantly, I'm just like, this ain't it. This ain't it. You got to head to the back, and you got to bring the people along who need the support here. And so the team of nine shakes out to basically being, I think it's Trevor, Louie, and Jamie up front. Spina is, oh no, Trevor's back with us. So I think it's Louie and Jamie up front. Spina is kind of alone in the middle. And then maybe Josh Payne. Actually, that's what it is. Once we sort of, I fade into the back and we reorganize. It's Josh Payne and Louie and Jamie are up front. Spina is kind of alone in the middle. And then in the back, it is Trevor. Behind Trevor is Libby. Behind Libby is Brandon. Behind Brandon is me. And then you are behind me. And I just believe that this moment here is this is what I was just meant to do in this race. And I don't know. Do you want me to tell it, or do you want to tell it?
Let me give my vantage first, and then you can fill it in because this is like I wish that Charlie was there. I wish we had the video of you kicking into coach mode on the trail because it was just incredible. I like it was the same thing that I witnessed at the Mo, but like your game was just fire, dude. It was like everything you said was the exact right thing to say. It was the right play. I'll never forget this one, right? This was just like I remember you said this. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. How did you ever figure out that this was the thing to say? You're like, Brandon, if you were Libby's coach, what would you tell her in this moment to encourage her to keep going forward? Because it's like he's kind of hurting and forcing him to encourage somebody else in that moment takes his eyes off his own pain and like makes him dig into a different part of himself, which is like aspirational, right? And it's just such a, oh my gosh, such a power move on your part to shift that energy. And then it's like, okay, Libby, what would you tell Brandon if you were his coach and you needed to encourage him? Right? It's like you're both powerful. You're both like determined. You both have leadership. You both can do this. Let's like locate that in each other for each other and push ourselves forward. And I just remember that moment, like, and wanting to have somebody capture it, that particular exchange, because it was so incredible. It was just so awe. I was in awe. It's like, oh my gosh, like I wish I was that smart. I wish I knew what to say. I wish I was that good. And I was like, damn, man, Ryan is just the truth. Like that's the truth right there. And it was so special. And you just did such an amazing job in that moment. So before you say anything that takes away whatever you did, I'm here to say it was a million times better than what Ryan is about to describe about how awesome he no, like for real, dude. Like there's a reason everybody on the team like pulls behind you so strong, dude. Is because you are that leader. And every time you're asked to prove it, you just smash through that top bound, dude. You smash through that limit. And it was just amazing. It was amazing to see.
Thanks, dude. It was really special to have you behind me for this stretch. Um, to paint the scene of what's going down, we basically are coming out of this aid station where the entire vibe is that our race is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And not only,
First time of the day, it's like this is bad. It's like not just
yeah,
like, ooh, this is gonna be a struggle. It's like this is bad. Like this is bad, bad.
this is bad. Our race is in jeopardy. It's in jeopardy way earlier than we expected, but it is also now nearly 5 p.m. We've been in this race for 12 hours. It is the heat of the day. We've been in the heat of the day for 4 hours or 5 hours. And, for me as a leader, the easy way to lead is to just assume that people will kind of do what I do. And the wrong way for me to lead is to really get on someone's case and maybe highlight deficiencies. And um, this basically just became my opportunity to do the thing that's hardest, but that is what's required of me. And we basically hit this, I'll call it a 4 mile stretch, and we're winding through these dried up creek beds, and the section of the course is laid out perfectly for this, where it's mostly mild descending, some slight sections where we're going to walk, but no real significant uphills. And this is the chance for me to really coach people and teach them like what it takes to do something like this. And I had recognized some maybe lethargic language throughout the day to this point. How are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling all right. How you feeling? Oh, my hamstring's nagging me. And I'm basically just thinking, Chelsea, what's going on? The car keys? Yeah.
Hi, Chels.
Hi, sorry.
Hope you had a great spin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you go out the back door, Chelsea? And yeah, it's basically this 4 mile stretch where I start to realize that if we want to make this race happen, like if this has any opportunity of happening, like I need to show up in this way, and I need to really guide my team on how they're thinking about this, how they're thinking about how they're feeling, and how they're speaking about it. And so I basically just fall into this rhythm of, Brandon, how do you feel? Forcing him to say, I feel great. Forcing him to say it with conviction and enthusiasm. Libby, how you feel? I feel great. And it wasn't necessarily just like a hammer, hammer, hammer. I let some silence linger at times. Brandon, what feels good? Libby, what feels good? And just over and over and over of, how do you feel? I feel great. And then evolving it to, Brandon, do you believe in Libby? You do? Fucking tell her. Let's go. Libby, I believe in you. Libby, you believe in Brandon? Let him know. Trevor's here. You guys believe in Trevor? I know I believe in me more because Trevor's here. That's for damn sure. And we just roll through this, and dude, we've been dragging. We've been hitting 20-minute miles. We've been walking. All of a sudden, I'm looking at my watch, 14:30. I'm like, boom, we just clipped off the best mile of the day. Look at my watch again. Beep, 14:05. I'm like, boom, another one. How you feel? I feel great. Brandon, you believe in Libby? Libby, you believe in Brandon? We all believe in Trevor? And we roll through these 4 miles or so, and we come into this water buffalo where our crew's at, and I had no expectation that the crew would be there. I didn't even really know where we were going, which is a lesson for me because I didn't even give a shit. I was just like, in this moment, we got to change shit now. That was the one part of the day. Now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't even think about it until right now. I had
Really
no
important
idea where
point.
we were headed.
It's a really important point. When you are lost in the moment of trying to reverse the negative energy in people, you have zero conception of yourself. Zero. Zero conception of you, your own needs, and what you need to take care of your own business. You have no conception of that. It's super important point, and it goes back to what I talked about when you're live coaching in one of these events, you don't realize how much of yourself you're giving away in the moment to help out these other people, as we should. That's our duty, that's our responsibility. So it's not as if this is a complaint or anything. It's just that's the reality of what you're actually doing.
And so we arrived at this water buffalo, and I I get right up 4 inches from Brandon's face. I'm like, dude, do you feel what just happened? How do you feel right now? Like, I'm not even saying, tell me you feel great. Like, how do you feel? Like, do you feel this? He's like, yes, this is the best that I've felt all day. And actually, specifically, the moment that I felt the best was when I told Libby I believed in her. I was like, boom, that's the secret, dude. That is the secret. And that is what we were going to lean on to bring this thing home. Now, at this point, the crew is all around. It's good vibes that we see them, but there is also this other sense of like, we just worked really hard to make that happen. We just worked really, really hard to make that happen. And we fill up at the water stop. We get good water, and we start coming out of this creek bed area, out of this desert road, which is then leading us up towards this asphalt road that we get on. And in this dirt road walk, I'm still with Libby and Brandon. They're side by side on me, and maybe it's not as intense as it was in that 4 mile stretch, but same themes of like, are you feeling okay? How do you feel? Like, my big thing at that moment was like, let make this effort feel easy. Like, we don't need to push effort. Make exactly what you're doing just feel as easy as possible. Better body position. Use your poles more. Get control of your breathing. If we need to slow down a second, that's totally fine. Like, we're not in a rush in that sense. And again, we're freaking 12 hours into this race, man. So like, we're hurting. And I really wanted to make sure that they weren't drifting into a mindset of it has to hurt or it's hurting, so I'm totally fading. I wanted them to like cut the difference on that and be like, I can keep moving with purpose, with posture, and we can be completely fine here for a while. We eventually come out of this dirt road. We cross over this highway or whatever, and we head onto this asphalt road. And I would say that getting to that asphalt road, it actually felt great because it was the first time all freaking day that we've got like flat surface to walk on. And it was very gradual as we're leading up
Yep.
into this incline.
And we had our
But
people.
what's that?
We had our crew people, which we weren't expecting to walk with us up the road. They were giving us, at least for me, like those, they were giving great energy. It was so nice to see them. We were walking up with like Mike and Lath and Blaine and Madison. Like
Totally.
they're walking up the hill with us, giving us like positive encouragement, positive vibes. So that's kind of like a little bit of a pleasant surprise. But like Smith Mesa, man, like Smith Mesa.
Right. And so I would say that for me personally, I was right with Libby and you were in the back with Brandon. And I had known how hard we had worked to get to that point. We had just had that whole thing with initially shifting up the order to improve the team morale. Then we get to the panic aid station and we think that the whole race is in jeopardy. Then we work very hard emotionally to turn things around. And it was starting to just dawn on me that like, this is definitely not guaranteed. This is definitely not guaranteed. And my sister was there, and my sister showed me a video from my little cousin. I got like a 10-year-old cousin, and he sent a prayer video, and she played it for us. And my aunt, his mom, also sent a prayer video, and she played them right there for Libby and I. And this was the first point in the race that I started to break down in tears. And it just hearing them really, it gave me a lot of belief, but it also gave me this realization of how monumental this challenge was. And it made it really real how hard we had worked just to even get to that point. And I think it was like the first time in my life, dude, that like I heard a prayer for me and I actually knew I needed it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That
think
makes a
that's what
lot
it
of sense.
was. And it wasn't
Yeah.
in the sense of like prayer request, right? Because
No,
I didn't make the
no,
request.
no.
It was just like, I'm like digging into a well that I don't know that it's as endless as I thought, or it's a different well than I expected to be digging into in this race.
Yeah.
And I need I need support. And um I still felt within myself enough to film a video and send it into the team. And I basically sent a prayer request video.
Yeah.
And I basically said, we're out here and this is real and this is not fucking easy. And we're at mile, who knows, 41, 42. I think my watch said something like that. We could see that turnaround point mesa in the back from what I had mentioned at mile 10. We could look back and like see it, be like, dude, look, see that thing
So
over there?
far.
Yeah, we were
It's
up on
so
that. Then
far.
we went all the way across the thing. Then we went all the way down. And now somehow we've made it all the way over here. And now I'm not even really sure where we're headed.
Oh my gosh, dude. Um, that's a huge share. Thank you so much. I hadn't heard that. And that's like I'm doing my best not to cry because like that's
Yeah,
who I
man. I can kind of feel it too, honestly.
it's who I am. Like it's funny because I don't I think I have the record for crying the most on the course, and none of them were bad cries. Like they were all just like these overwhelming of like positive and powerful emotion. But like that's like ultimate humility, right? Like, and it's funny because you when you talked on the pod about you were up on we're sort of moving in and around the story here, but it's our podcast and we get to do whatever we want. Like when you're up when you're up on number 60, you're up around 65 or whatever, and you're like you make the note on the podcast, you're like the mantras weren't strong enough. Like my mantras weren't strong enough. And I was about to start writing. I didn't know that you and I were hopping on a 3 hour debrief yesterday. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my time today and I'm going to write out my experience. And you know what the title of my experience I was going to write? Mantras don't get you through an ultra. God does.
Mm.
And I think you realized that was when it must have been when you realized that you're like, we need something bigger. Like something bigger has to come into play right now because this is not anything that we expected. And digging deep within ourselves is great, but like we've got to get in ourselves so that we can get beyond ourselves, right? Like that's the transcendence. That's the like, yeah, I know, dude. It's like,
I'm like crying. I'm literally crying.
yeah, but that's a beautiful cry. I can see the smile in your face. It's from your heart, dude. And I'm trying not to do that myself so that one of us can keep this podcast going and we don't end it in a blubber and a blur. And it's like, okay, well, part two we'll pick up when we're not bawling our eyes out. Like, but that like you want to understand the reality of the experience and of the emotion that we all went through up there? It's this, dude, or lady. Like Ryan is feeling the reality of it, and it's so powerful and overwhelming that it's causing him to break down internally. And it's not because he's weak, it's because he's powerful and because he's strong and he's open to feeling it. And it's beautiful. And we should all be like that. We should all want to cry. We should all want to open ourselves up to the reality of the deeds and the actions that we undertake in this life, which is ours. Okay. And when you get that prayer that you didn't even know you needed, and it becomes the most powerful thing you've ever heard in your life, it's like, there's your breakthrough. I love how you said so many times that The breakthrough comes in the moment where we don't want it to come because we're feeling so bad and it's in a position we never thought we'd be in. And it's not how we drew it up. But in that moment, we get exactly what we need. And it's not up to us. It's not up to us to get that out. That's a superficial understanding of why we want to do these things. That's the, I just want the belt buckle. That's the, I just need to get across the 100 so I can want it over other people. You are missing it. It's the moments you don't want to be in. It's the adversity you didn't think you'd ever come up to. And it's how you respond in those moments determines the breakthrough, the transcendence, and the destruction of the limits that are on you that you place upon yourself. So we're pausing here and we're getting into the reverence, the philosophy, and the spirituality of the damn thing, because that's what we all felt out there. You'll all see it. You'll all see it when our beautiful man Charlie puts together all the video footage, and you can feel just a fraction of the reality that we all felt out there. And that's why we went. We didn't go for belt buckles. We didn't go for those. We needed them to orient us. But we were on our search for something bigger, for something deeper, for something grander, greater, more legendary. This is our story. This is our legend. And I am so proud of it. And I'm so proud to have done it with you as a leader on your team, because this is where it's at. This is so much better. What we are doing right now, exposing it all, bearing the truth, opening our hearts. Yeah, man. This is it.
I think that it's crazy, dude, because it's always a setup. It's always a setup for something greater when you're in the arena like this. And I did not even realize it until right now, but I think that in that moment when I'm receiving those prayer videos, I think that it just hit me that I just needed somebody.
Yep.
And um
I wish I would have
I
known. I would have given you the biggest hug in the world, dude. I just didn't know.
yeah, no, I know, man. And that's the thing that I also didn't know about this whole thing. I totally underestimated what it was going to take to take this kind of a thing on with the team. And it was the breakthrough that I was meant to receive, and how that prayer moment set me up for that moment with my sister that I'll share on as we get there. Um, it was just super special. And all the things that were weighing on my mind at the time, I mean, it's mile 41, 42, and it's really hitting me that, like, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I brought the team into this challenge, and I just believed so hard that we would be able to get it done. And it was it was just it was really settling in, not only like how much we had left, but it was really settling in how hard we had worked just to get to where we were. That's really what it was. Like,
Yeah.
I'm standing right next to Libby and I'm like, this freaking chick, man, she's been battling for hours and hours and hours. And yeah, man, it was a cool moment. It was a really, really important moment just in my whole life, honestly. Um it felt it felt great to have my sister there right alongside us for a little while, and we ultimately then continue up this Smith Mesa climb. And I think that a big learning lesson for me is, like, I just looked at the course profile and read some shit online. And I was like, oh, well, we have a really steep decline here. And then we got a really big uphill part here and whatever, whatever. We're going out and we'll figure it out. And this Smith Mesa climb, man, it was like nothing I've ever seen before. It was a asphalt road and it went straight up from the canyon floor to ultimately the top of Smith Mesa. And it went straight up, then it would bang a right, then it would round a corner, and it would round a corner, and you'd see it just continuing up towards the sky. And it would just be like, holy shit, man, how does this thing keep fucking going? But not only that, you would see it go straight up to the sky. And then you would also see it way out to the right, wrapping around the other freaking bend of this mesa. And it's just like, what in the hell are we in here, man? Holy cow. And I was walking with Libby. You were walking with Brandon in the back. Um, Josh Payne, his moment, dude, his freaking moment, man. Out of nowhere, I had been doing some backwards walking. I felt my calves kind of barking for a second, so I'm like, let me walk backwards a little bit. All of a sudden, I see Josh Payne running, running, and Josh Payne ends up running all the way to the top of Smith Mesa. I haven't even looked at his Training Peaks file. I'm sure he had to be up at his threshold. He had to be. And he's coming up,
Yeah.
and I just see him, and I'm just like, good job, dude. And he just keeps his head down. No acknowledgement. And I'm like, he's fucking locked in. Let's go.
Yeah.
No idea. No idea what's, didn't even cross my mind about anything related to like performance. It was just like, he's cultivated his will.
Yes,
So
he
let's go.
did. Yeah, it was awesome. And the thing with Josh is that throughout that whole desert, as we're coming up, his foot is barking. He's starting to like get a lot of foot pain. He's got his like awesome story that he did on Instagram. Anybody who's listening to this, go and check that out on Instagram from Josh. But he's got his one point in the desert floor. He's like, yeah, pretty sure all my toenails are falling off, and like, whatever, don't need those. Like, we'll just keep moving. So he's got like this foot thing, and he sort of realizes like, I'm not getting up to the top if I walk. Like, I need to go. Like, I need to get there. And he just, like as you say, will is what you need. It's
That
the
was pure will.
willpower. It's the willpower, dude. If you don't have willpower, you're done.
That
Okay, it
was
doesn't
pure
matter.
will out of Josh Payne.
It
And
was awesome. It
there's
was
something that
awesome
I'll
to,
share up on him at the top that was very,
yeah.
very special. But we basically continue up this thing for, I mean, I don't even know. It had to have been over an hour of just walking up this insane incline. I was seeing a
Yep.
sign on the side of the road that had like some kind of bike picture. And I'm like, I could not imagine even riding my bike down this thing.
No,
Down this thing would be a death trap.
no, it was crazy.
It was crazy. I will say that one thing that was really cool is Libby and I, we like passed one or two people. And I
We
can't
we,
say enough, man. You pass somebody, all of a sudden you feel like you're winning the race.
we
So all
clipped
of a
people.
sudden it's like we had just had all of this shit go down. We are getting broken by this soul crushing climb. But
We're
in
passing
the
people.
final 20%, we actually passed somebody. Holy
Oh
shit,
yeah,
man. Which, like, this is the first time in hours that we've seen anybody else on the course.
yeah,
And so now the whole idea of, oh, we're like the last ones and we're going to be swept up by the time charts or whatever. It's like, that's out of the window. We're fucking back in the race, baby. Let's go.
Oh man, I remember pointing out each one of those people to Brandon because we were bringing up the room. Like, dude, like we're
We're in this
good.
thing.
And I was pointing back specifically to those miles that we did where I'm yelling, you're pushing us to negative splits, and I'm just yelling out, who puts up negative splits in the heat
Yeah.
of the day
Yeah.
after they've been killing? It's like it's our team of killers. Like, who can summon the strength? Like savages. Only savages can do that. So it's like, yeah, look, bro, we're clipping people. Like, we're in this. Like, we're doing it. We're getting it. We're going there. Like, we're just trying to get any psychological boost we can, right? And that's those are big. Those are big ones.
We did see two people actually walking backwards and they were like quitting.
Oh,
That
Yeah.
wasn't as positive of a vibe, I would say. Seeing people quit, like right in your presence, when basically everything in the back of your mind is saying, I'm dying here, doesn't feel great. But to pass those people felt awesome. And then as Libby and I crested this hill, there was another runner, and it was this chick, and she was a little bit of a heavier build. And we had sort of like this three-way moment where it's like, we just fucking did that, man. We just did that. Like, good grief. Good grief.
Good grief, Charlie
And
Brown.
we asked her, I asked her, like, have you done one of these before? She had done 200s, but never this race. And to me, um, I will curate this a little bit better in my future hundreds, but I was always looking to hear from somebody that they'd done this before. And I was looking for that to give me some kind of confidence. And that chick saying that she'd done 200s and never done this, I could see that she was struggling a little bit, but I'm like, we're right with somebody who's been here before and who knows what they're doing. And we probably
Yeah.
had what, a quarter mile or half mile sort of flat stretch into this aid
Indeed.
station. And um, it felt like we were able to catch some relief and gather ourselves a little bit before arriving to this aid station. And
Yeah.
then um, I'll just give you my perspective of the aid station before you
Please.
share. But we get in there. Um, it's wild, the temperature and climate change too, because now we're on top of this mesa,
It's
and now
cool.
the wind is whipping a bit, so it's gotten a bit cooler. And all of a sudden, I'm like checking on Libby, and Libby's like, I'm getting kind of cold. And I'm like, do you want a jacket? She was like, I just want to eat
Yeah.
shit, basically, and stay moving. And we hit the bathroom there. I see Josh Payne. And at this point, I see something in Josh Payne that I have never seen before. Here I am knowing that the team is struggling, right? I just had this emotional moment down at the base of this climb. We just had this whole climb. I saw Josh Payne run up this fucking thing. I have no idea what to expect in terms of where he's at. And he is so locked in. He is like, all right, we're here. This is a race. And I just remember the confidence that I felt knowing that I'm in battle with that dude. Like, that was a side of Josh Payne that I've never seen before. And another side of Josh Payne that I never have seen before was what he shared next, which was, you got to check on Jamie. Jamie's not taking in enough salt. And I'm like, dude, holy shit, man. Josh Payne's will just got revealed. Dog, let's go. Ran up the biggest
Yeah.
fucking hill I've ever seen in my life. He's locked in,
Yep.
he's dialed, but he's also checking in on his teammates, and he's also making sure that the people around him are good. And so I go to Jamie, and I sort of thought that Jamie was going to be like totally out of it. Jamie was fine mentally, but he's like covered in fucking salt. So I'm like, dude, all right, let's wash your neck off. Let's get your face off. Like, you're covered in shit. Let's make sure you get some electrolytes in. I gave him one of my elements. And that was ultimately an aid station that I would say completely turned around the energy. And I'll give you a second to share on your experience at that aid station. But coming out of that aid station, I sent another video to the team. I'm like, we're fucking back, man. We're fucking back. We made it up this thing. I told them briefly about the experience at the panic aid station. And now we were running down these slight descents. And I felt like we had recaptured the energy. And overall, I would just say completely different vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Because you're the leader. You have to have that sense of unwavering belief. Like, I think that's why that moment hits you so hard, because you're not allowed to enter into anything into your mind other than we're 100% committed and we're 100% getting this done. There is no option B. If you don't believe that, then we're not doing it. So you have to have that like singular minded focus. And then once that starts to like be revealed as maybe not what's going to happen, it's really difficult. Um, I had a different pulse on it. Again, I just wasn't physically suffering. Like, so when I saw Jamie at the top of the hill, and I'm very sheepish. And Jamie comes up to me and he's like, dude, how are you? And I'm like, dude, you look awful. Like, what's up? What's up with you? And he tells me, he's like, how are you feeling? And I just turned to him. I said, like, feel great. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that I feel good. He's like, I just remember this. He's like, why are you sorry? Like, own that shit. Like, you're a beast, dog. Like, let's go. Because everybody's in it, right? Everyone's in it. And my body is like responding. My watch died at 9 hours down there in the desert, but I looked up the Strava on it. And for the 9 hours, my BPM was like 100 at 100 BPM average for that
Mm-hmm.
9 hour effort. I was good. My body was there, but I had the sense. I had a sense that going into the night, things were about to get really difficult, and I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really strong feeling that this might be the last stretch for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's something about the darkness that brings it out. That brings out the I will say doubt. Darkness
Mm-hmm.
brings out doubt. Darkness brings in doubt. It's temperature change. There's yeah, we did the hill, but that's adrenaline. And what happens when the adrenaline wears off and we realize that we're still kind of in the same spot? So I was less optimistic. I saw Louis and Trevor leave, and there was a part of me that thought like it would be really great to go with them, right? Like because you're saying at the back, like I need to get out of the back. I'm like I need to get out of the back. Like
Yep.
I have not felt positive, rising, ascending, conquering energy in 5 hours,
Yep.
and my body feels like it needs that,
Yep.
but I was not about to go with them as much as I wanted to. And that would have been the selfish move to go and get my belt buckle and to get the 100 on the first try, which for me was totally gettable. And you don't know what could have happened out there, obviously, right? So I'm not saying, oh, I got the 100 and whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, it was there for me. It was really there for me. And it was in that moment where I gave it away. And I was like, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to do that. We got athletes up here that are struggling, and my job is to be with them. And that was the decision I made. And so the whatever, it was like Trevor and Louis, they came up to you and they were like, we need to go. Like Louis, like, I need to go. If I'm waiting around any longer, I'm not finishing. And Louis is just such a king that he would never have made that without coming and talking to you first, right? And making sure that was okay. But once that split happened, I knew that a lot of people weren't going to finish the race. But I wasn't about to say anything because I'm not interested in putting more panic into the group, and I could be wrong. And who am I to like sap out somebody's will or desire or a Hail Mary or a miracle? But on the top of that Smith Mesa, 41 miles or whatever, I knew. I knew some people weren't going to make it. So I made the decision to make sure that everybody got safe to however long they needed to go. And your point about how hard everybody had worked to get there is so valid. And I had recognized that. I'm like, people have been suffering and struggling, and they've been in the pits for hours already. And we don't know what's out there on that trail. And the night is likely going to break them because they've already been in it for so long that there's likely something out there that's going to happen. And my gut was right. And I don't know if you want to keep going or if you want to pause. I'm fine either way.
Yeah.
It's up
Um,
to you.
well, I'll just say that at that moment, I did not view that as a huge break point. I mean, the group was so separated up that climb. I mean, I could see people, right? I could see how far up ahead Louis was, but
Yep.
referencing where he was, I was like, well, they just must have gotten to the aid station significantly before us. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not crazy concerned that they're going ahead. So I didn't really view that as a huge break point. Um, you're talking about pausing and maybe recording the back half of this a separate time.
Just because we're coming up on the 2 hours now, so
We're coming up on 2 hours. I think that that probably makes sense.
I
So
just want
we
to throw
have,
that out there.
yeah. That's fine. Um, this is so we'll pause up here at the top of Smith Mesa. That's the idea.
I think that's a great place to pause because I mean, for me personally, and again, everyone's situation is different, so we're going to try to tell everybody else's stories as well. But this is our podcast, and we can tell you best our experiences, and then try
Yeah.
to fill in for other people. for me, mile 41 to mile 50 was like everything of the race
Yeah,
and deserves its own.
the back half of this is going to be another 2 hours.
That's the thing. It's like if we start it, it's like, and you want to talk about emotions, it's like, well, get ready for some emotions, people, because that's what's coming. That's what's coming in part two. Everything, every single emotion you want to think about, that's what's coming
Yeah.
in number two. But we do get triumph at the end, everybody. So it's all good. It's a beautiful story. Like, and we love it and we want to tell it. But you're feeling the emotional weight and the gravity of it. And as I said off the top, we're not rushing this. And we're going to take all the time. We're going to give all the space. We're going to let all the feels come out. We're going to let all the stories and the heroics of everybody who participated come to the forefront. So we're going to pause the story here. I think it's a good place. And I don't know, maybe we'll do it tomorrow or we'll pick it up another time in terms of when we can get together and put this on. But
I gotta just
the
share, dude.
story,
I peed in my gallon because I had to go so bad, and I thought we were holding it down.
let's
Right
go.
call.
I definitely didn't pee, but like I want to. So this is also good. This is also good. So yeah, man. Talking
First
about
time ever
dedication.
just peeing
Talking
in the
about
middle of a podcast. I just stood here and just, I mean, that's a half
that's a
gallon jug,
lot.
and that's got to be at
That
least 65% full. So,
good for you. That's impressive. I'm if we didn't run 100-mile trail race together, I would be like maybe a little bit grossed out. But hey, like once you do something like that with somebody, it's like it's all good. It's all good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, we'll wrap this here, and we'll chat on getting on for part two here.
Yeah, yeah. This was great. Thanks for listening, everybody. We got a lot more to tell you, and this is the story that never ends. Like, and because it's just so awesome, and there's so many wrinkles, and there's so many moments, and the people who went on the race are going to listen to this and they're going to think, oh, I got to set the record straight on that. Or like, I need to add in this other story. Like, because like we're not, we're doing our best. We are doing our best, right. To bring it out. But we also need the other athletes. We also need the pacers. We need the crew. We need everybody to fill in sort of like the full texture of what everybody experienced out there. So we're doing our best. We hope we're just doing honor and respect to everybody who was on there because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to paint the reality and the truth of the situation because the truth is beautiful, and it doesn't always make us look good either. One last thing I will add that I just want to mention: we didn't do a good enough job of preparing for the train. That was our responsibility. We didn't do a good enough job. We should have been on the trail. We should have gone out and scouted spots on the trail we thought could have given us problems. We didn't do that. I feel like I should have spoken up much more. I didn't lead well enough in that area of the team. And I think I could have, if I was a little more forceful, uh, I think that we could have done it. So I think I dropped the ball there. And it's
Let me
something
add into that. Let me add
I'll
into
think
that.
about for a
So
while.
let me add into that. So the initial idea of doing this race, I had the idea of us going down to that area to do a training camp. And it ended up just being too much logistically for people to figure out getting out to Utah in like February and then also April. And I think that in hindsight, that was actually a smart thing to have figured out doing. I don't think that any trail scouting while we just showed up for the week, like I don't think an extra 10 minutes on the trail. I mean, it might have given us
No,
some mental preparation, but no, the terrain was gnarly. I mean, the terrain was no doubt
it
gnarly.
was, yeah, we should have done a better job of thinking about the conditions and the terrain, which wasn't as big of a part of our prepping and our team calls as it needed to be. And that was a mistake. We made a mistake.
Yeah. But, you know, in the other sense, part of doing endurance and part of doing big time endurance is you find yourself in a little bit over your head. And that's where the
Love it.
breakthroughs come. And
Love
I
it.
appreciate the call out on that. And I agree completely. But with that being said, you know, I think that most of these breakthroughs that we're talking
They
about,
don't
they don't
come.
happen if we're running 100 miles on a fucking high school track.
I I agree. I agree. And it's this idea of humility and owning the thing you could do better. Like we
Yeah.
all have to do. Nobody walks out of Zion 100 on our team without something they can't improve upon. Okay, and these are not necessarily small things either. So we all got humbled. We all had humble pie, and we would have eaten it, but like by the time we were probably ready to eat it, we were sick of food, like because we've been running all day, right? So we don't even want to eat the humble pie. But that's kind of what we're trying to express. That's what we're trying to get out. Like there's a fall and a rise for each individual. That was a part of this. That was a part of this journey. The important thing to leave as we pause this part, and I promise we are going to pause it. Everybody rises.
Everybody
Everybody
rises.
rises. Everybody rises.
All right, let's pause there. Later.